Hey boys and girls, it's time for some more chapters of Wishtree. I'm super excited to get back into this book. If you remember, Red and Bongo are coming up with plans to get Stephen and Samar to talk because Stephen hasn't been very nice to Samar and Red really wants them to be friends. So far we've seen 2 plans fail, and so now we're going to see the 3rd plan and see if it works. And so in this plan, Red had Bongo take Samar's wish, which was for a friend, out of the tree. And so let's read and see what happens. The moon bathed us all in cool blue light as we awaited Samar's nightly visit. She came out in her robe and slippers. Sitting on her blanket, she waited patiently as the baby scrambled over to her. Around her neck, she was wearing the beribboned key that Bongo had given her. "Where's my crow friend?" she whispered, as the ewes somersaulted in front of her. She looked up into my branches, and I was glad I'd instructed Bongo to hide on Stephen's roof. Right on schedule, Bongo flew to Stephen's bedroom window. She settled on the sill. Samar's fabric scrap dangled in her beak. Carefully, she tapped on Stephen's window. Nothing happened. I told Bongo to be as quiet as possible. We didn't want Samar to see what we were up to. Tap, tap, tap. Louder this time. Still nothing. Stephen apparently was quite a sound sleeper. Bongo looked at me. Her eyes said, "Now what?" She tried again. Tap, tap, tap. Samar started. "What was that?" she asked. Fortunately, Harold distracted her with an attempt to fly onto her arm. It was more awkward hop than flight, and Samar giggled. Good going, little Harold, I thought. Bongo dropped Samar's wish onto the sill. Tap, tap, tap. Nothing. She paced back and forth in front of the window. Then she froze. Her eyes glinted in the moonlight. Bongo leaned close to the glass and performed her very best fire engine sound. By the time Stephen's window flew open, Bongo was already back on the roof, watching her efforts pay off. Stephen peered out. He rubbed his eyes. He noticed the scrap on his sill. Frowning, he held it up, catching the moonlight in order to read the words written on the fabric. He looked down at the lawn. There was Samar looking up at him, surrounded by an odd collection of baby animals. "You rock," said Bongo. When Stephen eased out the front door, he was wearing red pajamas and a gray sweatshirt. His light brown hair was mussed, his eyes bleary. The flashlight he was carrying sliced through the darkness. The babies turned toward him and froze. Their eyes glowed like little moons. Flash squealed in fear. Stephen clicked off his light, and Flash seemed to calm a bit, although he was definitely hiccuping. "Hey," Stephen whispered. "Hi," Samar whispered back. Stephen sat down next to Samar. The babies watched with interest. "Why do they come to you?" Stephen asked. "I don't know. It's like magic." "No," Samar shook her head. "I'm just quiet. They like that." Bongo flew down to Samar's shoulder. "Hello," she said to Stephen, mimicking Samar's voice. "Wow," he said. "That's amazing." "Yesterday I heard her imitate a doorbell." Stephen grinned. "She gave me this key," Samar said, holding it up. "I don't know what it's for. A diary or a jewelry box, maybe?" "Or the world's smallest door," Stephen joked. For a while, everyone fell silent. Even the baby raccoons were still. At last, Stephen held out his hand, revealing Samar's wish. "I found this," he said. Even in the moonlight, Samar's blush was visible. She looked away. "I'm sorry about that word," Stephen said softly. "The word on the tree? It wasn't us." Samar nodded. "My parents aren't bad people. They're just afraid of things," Stephen shrugged. "So are mine," said Samar. "I heard my father talking about moving. If we can find a safe place to go." She gave a sad smile. "If there even is such a place." "I'm sorry," Stephen said again. The babies, sensing Stephen could be trusted, began to tussle and romp. Harold and the smallest ewe searched for bugs. Rose Petal and her brother, Hot Buttered Popcorn, played tug of war with a long piece of grass. "I'll miss them," Samar said. "I hope you don't move," Stephen said. A light blinked on in Stephen's house. "I should go," he said. "If my parents see me, I should go." "Night," Samar said in a whisper. Oh, the things I wanted to say to those two. I wanted to tell them that friendship doesn't have to be hard, that sometimes we let the world make it hard. I wanted to tell them to keep talking. I wanted to make a difference, just a little difference, before I left this lovely world. And so I did. I broke the rule. "Stay," I said. The animals gaped at me in astonishment. Even the youngest babies knew about the "don't talk to people" rule. Bongo darted to my top branch. "Red," she cried in a strangled whisper, "you can't." "Oh, but I can," I said. "What have I got to lose?" "But," as I was saying, I returned my attention to Stephen and Samar. They were staring at me, jaws dropped, eyes wide, as frozen as flash had been not long ago. "We're dreaming," Stephen muttered. "Right?" "At the same time?" Samar asked. "Is that possible?" "Pinch me," Stephen said. Samar complied. "Definitely felt that," Stephen reported. "Maybe it was a dream pinch," Samar suggested. "Excuse me," I interrupted. "I have 216 rings worth of wisdom to convey and not much time." Stephen reached for Samar's hand. "If it's a dream," he said, "at least it's a cool one." And so I began. I haven't always been a wish tree. It happened in 1848, long before I was surrounded by concrete and cars, when I was just a few decades old, still a youngster by Red Oak standards. No longer a lanky sapling, I was solid and strong, but not anchored to the earth the way I am now. This was a time, like many others, when hungry, desperate people sailed on crowded boats to settle here. Many of them ended up, as they always seem to, in my neighborhood. The blue and green houses were brown then, and filled to overflowing with new arrivals. Sometimes the newcomers were welcomed, sometimes they were not. But still they came, hoping and wishing as people always do. One of our new residents was a young Irish girl named Maeve. She'd voyaged across the Atlantic with her 19-year-old brother, who died of dysentery during the trip. Their mother had passed away shortly after Maeve was born. Their father when the children were 9 and 12. Maeve was solid and plain, but when she smiled, it was like sunshine peeking through clouds. She had a deep laugh, and her hair was as brilliantly red as my finest autumn attire. 16, alone and penniless, Maeve shared a tiny room with 5 other immigrants. She worked night and day, cleaning and cooking and doing whatever she could to stay alive. Maeve soon discovered she was gifted at caring for the sick. She had no special knowledge, no secret remedies, but she was kind and patient, and she knew how to soothe a fevered brow with a cool cloth as well as anyone. What she didn't know, she was willing to learn. As time passed, word grew of Maeve's abilities. People brought her their sick piglets and their lame horses, their coughing children and fretful babies. Always she explained that she wasn't sure she could help. But since people in the neighborhood were too poor to go to a doctor, they turned to Maeve. And since people believed she could help them get better, Maeve tried to live up to their hopes. When she succeeded, and even when she didn't, patients and families would leave small tokens for her. A whittled figurine of a bird, a hairpin, a half a loaf of bread. Once someone even left a leather-covered journal with a tiny silver key that opened its lock. When Maeve was out tending to someone who was sick, people took to leaving their thank yous in my lowest hollow. It was still a fresh wound, just a couple of seasons mended, but because it faced the house where Maeve roomed and not the street, it was a safe place to leave a token of gratitude. That's when I realized that hollows can be a good thing for people, not just birds and animals, Little did I know just how good. All right. So tomorrow I will continue with some more chapters of Wishtree, and it will continue Maeve's story from Red. And if you remember, Red talked about how Samar reminded Red of a little girl from long ago, and maybe that girl is Maeve. So come back tomorrow to hear more of Red's story and see if Stephen and Samar really do become friends. Bye.